So beginning with the breakthrough trip into the maze in 2020, the Helm's Deep cave explorers and mappers, well, they discovered the presence of numerous stone structures. Some of these are quite simple, some of them are more complex, and they're scattered throughout the maze passages. The structures, we mentioned them in our 2021 initial archaeological assessment for the state archaeologists. But I mean, it was clear from the start that they had significance. The cavers saw that, we saw that. In 2022, we experimented with recordation techniques, and then we decided to resolve to study them in more detail. Our initial goal was to record 25 of these stone structures in the cave, in the maze. In 2023 and 2024, we undertook dedicated research trips. In all, we got better, so we did record more than 50 of these structures, and that's enough to make some preliminary conclusions, which is the purpose of today's presentation. These late archaic stone structures at Helm's Deep Cave are of varying sizes, shapes, and construction. They're found throughout many of the parts of the cave, at least many of the parts explored prehistorically. We think they are primarily trail or route markers, which of course would be essential in the underground maze. Some of them may also indicate direction. However, a few passages appear to be blocked, that is, marked as the wrong way, with upright rectangular rock leaning across the passage entrance. Together, these stone structures are a unique feature of the cave's cultural landscape, and again opens another window into the minds of the prehistoric explorers. Some of the stone structures are also delicate and vulnerable. A few have collapsed or been inadvertently damaged by passing cavers, which we hope to minimize through heightened awareness. When mapping of the cave commenced in 2020, I guess late 2020, early 2021, the modern explorers of Helm's Deep Cave noted the prehistoric stone markers in their cartographic surveys. They were referred to originally as NFURs, native, that is Native American, flipped up rocks, after one of the most common forms, which is a single rock placed upright on the cave floor. Some stone structures were conveniently placed, and so they were utilized by modern explorers as location for survey stations. In the early survey trips, some of the cavers also made their own rock cairns, explicitly for placing survey points. So, for example, the stone structures used at B29, at BC15, at BEG5, at BEG6, those are modern stone structures. This is modern. This is not prehistoric. We have since discouraged both the practice of using stone structures for survey points and creating your own stone structures because, of course, it does confuse or complicate the archaeological record. For our purposes, if we find that a stone structure was also used as a modern survey station, we then evaluate it carefully in terms of form, construction, and so forth. But we also consult with the original surveyors and obviously the 2021 iteration of the cave map, which marks several stone structures as either modern or NFURs. None of the stone structures without survey stations are suspected to be recent, although we have to be careful because there's vertically oriented breakdown which could confuse you at times. As far as we can tell, there's never been a previous comprehensive study of underground stone structures in American caves. Although, as in so many aspects of cave archaeology, Patty Jo Watson pointed the way by documenting their presence. In her 1973 study of Lee Cave, I guess Gordon is probably here, this is his cave, Lee Cave, Kentucky. In her 1973 study, Lee Cave, which is a late archaic site, and it had not been explored by humans for over 4,000 years, Patty Jo Watson noted the presence of, quote, 2 limestone cairns. We tentatively assumed the cairns to be prehistoric because we had found no trace of post-Aboriginal visitors to Marshall Avenue before our discovery of it. One cairn stands near L10. It is composed of rock piled loosely to a total height of about 2 feet. She then continues. Another cairn composed of limestone slabs stands about halfway between K35 and K36. It is covered with fallen sulfate minerals and has several fragments of cane charcoal on it, a further indication that it is Aboriginal in origins. Although not mentioned in the text, she included, the included cave map actually shows a third rock cairn. So there's one here, and then another back in the back. She doesn't talk about all three, but the map does show a third as well. She included a photograph in the text. This is the NSS bulletin that this appeared in. And the photograph has the caption, quote, "One of the limestone cairns found in the eastern terminal breakdown." Watson, however, did not make any explicit, in fact, she was explicit about not making conclusions about their purpose, nor did she further follow up on that particular research path. Now, there are a couple of other underground prehistoric stone structures that we know about that are unpublished, frankly not very well known, but also from Kentucky. In 1998, CRF cavers explored and mapped Watson's Trace in Mammoth Cave, a previously unknown passage, and several small stone structures were observed, according to Dr. Rick Toomey. Presumably, these are from the early woodland period when most of the activity at Mammoth occurred. Our own observations elsewhere in Mammoth Cave suggest that there were probably many more indigenous stone structures present at one time, although they have been destroyed by historic activity, they're unrecognized, or they have been misattributed. Specifically, we suggest that the finger-style stone markers shown in Indian Avenue, Black Chambers, and Blackall Avenue, that these are all ancient. Blackall Avenue also has a large stone structure, probably prehistoric, which was built for mining access to an upper crack with abundant gypsum. Now, nothing like this is known from Helm's Deep or, frankly, any other cave that I'm aware of. Now, Turner Cave in Hardin County, Kentucky, was also mined for gypsum in the early woodland period. And it has at least 3 prehistoric stone structures, which we interpret as trail or intersection markers. The underground structures were extant when Glenn Turner opened the cave entrance in 2008. For the first time in over 2,000 years, people entered the cave. As we documented in 2019, two stone structures at Turner are pointed upward. The first, a single long, narrow rock, slightly diamond-shaped, placed partially within the cave sediment. The second is a single rock placed on top of the substrate. Scars along one side and the presence of debris at its foot suggest the rock was modified to its current pointed shape. The third example was located on a ledge at a passage junction. It's a small composite structure consisting of 2 base rocks with a third centered on top. Turner Cave also shows the use of red ochre in one location, which we frankly have not seen anywhere else. So the stone structures at Helm's Deep Cave are not unique, but their numbers and their preservation makes them ideal for research. At Lee and Turner Cave, the number of examples are very limited. That is 3 from each site. And at Mammoth Cave, later activities have confused the archaeological record. Now, we saw and noted several of these stone structures on our initial trip to the cave as part of our broader archaeological assessment. Our focus at the time was mostly on other features like the cave art and the human remains. The stone structures did pique our interest, though, especially because of our previous work at Mammoth, Turner, and of course their mention in the Lee Cave literature. In May 2022, while on an osteology trip to the BP Passage with Dr. Tiffany Saul, we first attempted to document a few of these. This is utilizing the 3D lidar scan of Jim Honecker's iPhone, because we don't have expensive equipment and we don't want to carry it from the cave, at least heavy equipment. Now, it's not perfect, but the approach did show promise. And so we were encouraged, and we began to more systematically collect data on the structures. A little bit later, we did another osteology trip with Dr. Saul, this time to more of the southern maze. This is in February 23, and so we began to more seriously collect the data. Our research techniques were solidified on that trip, and so we've been following the same procedure since then on the dedicated research trips, which were in December of 23 and March of 24. Once a likely structure is observed in the cave, we assign it a feature number. We've been using TM for these, trail markers, although as we'll see, they may not all be trail markers, so we call them TM. And then two of us on the team, usually Jim and I, independently photograph it with scale. We do include a whiteboard with the important feature information, you know, the cave name, the trail marker number, the location, that is the nearest survey point, the date, the recorders, and so on. Then Jim will 3D scan, use a 3D lidar scan of the feature. This is what he's doing here. You can see him holding his iPhone there and the light in the other to illuminate. And so he does that while we record specific information in written notes, and then, you know, on to the next stone structure and repeat. While most structures are recorded separately, multiple placed stones in proximity are sometimes recorded as individual elements within a trail marker cluster. So if you had, you know, with a meter apart or less, you might call them one trail marker, but with several different components. We will hope to eventually display the data on the map based on our documentation. We started just inside the maze entrance crawl. We continued into the B passage survey and in some adjacent passages. This is mostly the entrance and southern maze. Later we concentrated more on BK passage, which is a major route of travel starting to lead to the north. And we found, we had noted many stone structures when we'd been going through there elsewhere. Only a small number of passages have been specifically examined for these features, so our work at best is seen as a beginning. So what are our results? What have we done? That sort of thing. Our initial goal, as I said, was to record 25 structures, but the team did become more efficient in recordation, and so we did raise the goal of 50, which we did reach earlier this year. So we have, I believe, documented 52 designated trail markers. We actually have 54, but it turns out 2 of them were repeated because I keep bad notes. But 52 discrete ones. We have additional information that is limited information, maybe a location or a photograph. Well, we have some partial information about a number more, perhaps 15 more. Now, unfortunately, this does include a couple that have been destroyed. Most of them are in pretty good shape, but there have been a couple which have fallen. This is a small balance stone between B8 and B9, just inside the maze. I took this on my very first trip in the cave. It's collapsed. It's no longer there. I mean, the rocks are there, but they've fallen. Because it was delicately balanced, you can see it's a 3-rock thing. And so, I mean, you just had to brush against it, and every caver goes right past it, so it was sort of inevitable. Luckily, we do have it recorded here, although we had not scanned it yet, so that was depressing. So despite these losses, the stone structure resource is remarkably rich. Our survey suggests, frankly, there will be hundreds of these eventually extant in the maze. Norman Halliday, in his book on indigenous stone structures in the Canadian Arctic, called Inuksut, he noted, quote, that the nature of the local stone largely determines the shape and the size of the Inuksut and how they are constructed. And he noted that certain types of rock allowed more flexible designs, including, quote, large flat stones of varying thickness. Well, these insights can be applied to Helm's Deep Cave. I want to make sure I'm at the right spot here. Yeah. So as we've seen, it's thinly bedded limestone and it's shale. And so those are the rocks that are locally available. Slab breakdown is common. So most of the stone structures at Helm's Deep are composed of one or more thin, flat stones. Most of them are relatively modest in size. Now, color considerations is probably secondary. But in a few cases, there are, where there are 2 types of stone in proximity, like in a shale collapse, it does appear that color was, maybe a factor. This is so weird. So they incorporated color differences. So here you have the darker upright stone that's been placed amidst the lighter limestones. I guess that's shale. This is a trail marker 40. However, to us, shape was much more important than color when we talk about the creation, recognition, and utilization of stone structures by ancient explorers. While the floor sediments are poorly understood, the thinly bedded rocks of Helm's Deep Cave do tend to break along straight lines, and this often results in thin, angular, or geometric shaped floor breakdown. Other stones, of course, are highly irregular in shape. Native American explorers utilized both in their construction of underground markers. So now we're going to do a few categories. The stone structures can be sorted based on shape and construction. However, I would point out there are overlapping and hybrid forms. There are several what we might call general shapes, and they're expressed again in simple and more complex ways. There are vertical, rectangular, or columnal. So that would be this one, vertical, rectangular, columnal. You have triangular with a double slanted like the one on the right. You also, so that's triangular top there. Then you have a triangular base that is, well, a triangular top, but only one-sided angle instead of two angles. Or a triangular base with the bottom end down. Those are all pretty typical. You have, again, well, I'm sorry, I think I went past one. Let me see, 25. Okay, so triangular base, one angle. You've got some that are the side appears to be triangular, not the top or the bottom. You have horizontal, if you will, almost rectangular. Some of them become more circular. You have your famous rhombus or diamond shaped. Everybody who goes in the cave just about has seen this one. Right there on the left as you're going through the BK passage. New Year's, just before you even, not New Year's borehole, the one before that. It's right in that, yes.
Have you compared kind of the shapes based on how the rock in that passage breaks? Because as someone who's made stations on those,
yeah.
Some of them tend to the corner of it shears off really easily.
Yep.
So and then others it's the corner's really nice and stable and sharp and you can dig it in good.
That's absolutely true. So they're using the nature of the rock, but as we're going to see, they also modify the rock to the shape they want. That's correct. So these are, I call this one a round. It's not exactly round, but it's as close as you get. And then you get the notched ones, notched on the side. And these are man-made notchings. So they're hitting it with a rock and hammering it and making a notch on the side. So you've got notched sides. You've got your notched tops. You know, if you see one or two, you might think, oh, that's natural. But when you start seeing them over and over and over again, you start to think something's going on. And then, of course, you have your irregular shapes that are just, I don't know how to describe them except to say they're irregular, they're thin, they're often pulled up. And so, again, here we can see we have our scans. The lidar scan works really well on the ones on the floor. The ones that are leaning against the passage, it doesn't do nearly as well, it doesn't do quite as well on. So they did modify the stones to obtain the desired shape. All the notched structures are thought to be anthropogenic, all of them. Some are vaguely zoomorphic. I don't know, do you see an animal there? You could if your imagination was on. So triangular shapes, of course, are pretty common. Now, one thing we know from other Native American studies is that the shape had cultural meaning. Now, obviously, we're not sure exactly which group, but these are often broad cultural meanings. So triangular, well, that tended to be what was considered a protective shape. And now this is in the Northeast. We're not as familiar with the Southeast. I don't have found the literature. But triangular shapes are widely used for protection or as blocking symbols. However, their use and their, it varies greatly among different native groups. It's really too early to suggest specific meanings for most of the stone shapes. although we can make some initial conclusions, maybe not about their meaning, but about their function. What number am I? 34. In terms of construction, the most common technique is a single stone flipped up. There it is. Placed either pointed up or erected on its end. In areas with sediment substrate, like this spot, they're often embedded into the ground. Now in breakdown areas, they're more likely to be placed or wedged in cracks in the floor. In some hard-floored areas, they're placed directly on the ground and then held up with supporting rocks at the base. Oops. I'm one ahead, sorry about that. Held up with supporting rocks at the base. The structure at B26, which we saw on our first trip there, this is one of the more complex and delicate. The two structures I showed, one I showed earlier, balanced, which has been destroyed, and then the one at B10 also had these counterbalance construction. Now another common construction technique seen really only at Helm's Deep Cave involves leaning one or more long narrow stones vertically across the opening of a passage or directly against the wall. Now sometimes additional stones are found at the base or layered on top of the primary leaning stone. We call them leaners when we're working in there. The very first stone structure found in the cave, which is this one at B6, is an example of one of these leaners that may have been a blocking passage. When we went in, there was a single long tapered stone leaning across the entrance of the BA passage. Again, this is the first side passage to the left, the one that most of them went in that first day of exploration. But there's similar flow. This is right to the left of there, and you can see there's similar stones here, and then there's another stone here. So even though only one of them was upright when I first entered the cave, remember the cavers had been in there. So I'm thinking at some time in the past there were at least two and possibly more of these leaning against the passage. Now, why is this significant? Because when exiting the cave, you do not want to go this way. This is the last wrong way to go on the way out. So, and it looks like this is the way to go because the way out is actually down a little bit to the left. So, in our interpretation, what's going on here is they symbolically block the side passage that was the wrong way to show. And so it's the other way, it's the route not blocked, which leads to the cave entrance. In other words, the place stones indicate not which way to go, but which way not to go. That's what we think about that one. There are other instances of side passages being blocked with several place stones. Trail marker 16. Now, today there's only one of them still standing, but then when you start looking, there were two more up at one time. So that passage may also have been blocked. Haley and Clinton told me about another one they had explored that had been blocked. So there are some other examples as well. Now, in most other cases, leaning a single narrow rock across a passage opening or against a wall was not necessarily to block it. What I think it's doing is creating a landmark. That is, it marked an important intersection or otherwise helped in navigation. And there are so many examples. Trail marker 2 is a single tapered rock stone leaning against the wall near the mouth of the passage. Trail marker 13, again, everybody has seen this one, BK21. There's a small leaner here on the right. And then the large blocker, or the large one on the left as well. Nobody pays attention to these, but there they are. It didn't set itself there. Trail marker 43 has two large leaning stones across a passage opening and a smaller stone propped against the wall. Now this one I don't think is to block it, but they wanted to make it visible because this is the way out. So you want to, when you're in here exploring, you want to be able to see this mouth of this passage, and so they put these markers there allowing them to know where they were and how to get back to where they want to be. Trail markers 52 and 53 are columnal, that is columns. And again, irregular, 53 is very, very irregular, but these are simply leaned against the wall. It's very simple. You can't put it in the dirt very easily, so they just lean it against the wall. One of the most or best known current landmarks in the cave is trail marker 31, shown here. This is a stone structure at the start of the BKK passage. Most of you guys have seen this. It has a triangular rock, so you've got this upside down triangular rock placed here, and then you've got a spade or heart-shaped rock leaning against it, so it's sort of a double layered effect, a smaller stone propped against it, if you will. And again, it's a very prominent landmark. To show you how prominent it is, cavers themselves have done things to mark it, like put reflectors there and that sort of thing, because it's important in route finding. Now, in addition, let's just go up here. In addition to single stones leaned against the wall, like the one we saw last time, there are several that are multiple stones laid across each other, just to make sort of a two-layer effect. Trail marker 31, the one we saw previously, had that. This one, you say, well, where's the two-layer effect? Well, here's the big rock, and then here's the small one at the base someone placed there. You know, maybe they're adding their 2 cents. Like Mammoth Cave, right? So whichever state you're from, you take the rock and you put it there. So, possibly anyway. Here's some more examples. At trail marker 19, you have this triangular rock placed here, and then this other irregular rock is placed on front. And when you look at it, it looks like one rock, but when you look at it from the side, it's clearly 2-stone construction as they lean it there again as a marker. The arrangement of the stone structures is also interesting. Many of them are isolated single structures. You also have clusters of 2 or 3 structures. So here we see a couple of structures. Complex structures. So a lot of them are flipped up, but here you have them flipped up and then they're pushed together. Now they're not really leaning against each other for balance. They're embedded in the soil, but they're pushed together to form this sort of unusual structure. Some of them are multiple rocks that are leaning straight up or actually maybe even leaning apart a little bit. Again, everybody's seen this one at BK13. Again, multiple rocks flipped up, and then this one's leaning out a little bit. That's at trail marker 27. And then this is where I wanted to get. So you've got these individual rocks, and then you've got the double rocks, the clusters. This is at BEG 9. This is actually where George did the third of his footprint areas. And you can see that you've got the larger rock and the smaller rock, but how are they placed? They're placed across the passage. So not linear down the passage like a line, but across the passage, which had some sort of meaning. I just don't know what it was. And here's another cluster at BK59A3. Basically, more research is needed to discern, what this might mean. When we look at surface trails, sometimes with Native Americans, you have a rock, and then if there's a rock on the left side, that means like go left. Or you have a rock on the right side, that means go right. So there might be some directional aspect here. You've got this one, it doesn't need this rock here, but it's here, so what does that signify? It certainly doesn't need that as well. So the clusters is what we're talking about. And of course, some of the single stones also might indicate direction. This one seems to be, some of them are pointing south. Is that pointing in? Is it pointing back towards the cave entrance? It's not 100% clear. Now, in addition to like parallel across the passage and individual and small clusters, you do have some linear arrangement. That is where you'll have one and then another and then another and then another, and they're all visible from each other. And in fact, in an area like this, they don't need to be this close together. You can see further than this, but they've made this linear arrangement. To me, this is suggestive of actual trail marking. Examples include these. This is BK 57. You can see two trail markers there, 31 and 42. Sorry, 41 and 42. In the BAL passage, there are a lot of similar examples. I mean, in the space of 70 or fewer feet, there are 5, I've shown 4 here, there are 5 different markers. I mean, 2 of them would be enough. So why are they putting them every few feet? I'm not 100% sure. The largest concentration of stone markers is in the BK borehole, or the New Year's borehole if you want to call it that. It does have a linear arrangement. And there's a cluster here that Jim's at, and you can't really see it. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, but there are quite a few right in this area. But they're not in a line, and they're not blocking, so there's something else going on here. So it is part of a line in that you can, from here you can see another, and you can see another, and you can see another going into BK, but the particular purpose of this concentration is not clear. Still, the number of erected stones on both sides of the path of travel, and especially their complicated arrangement, suggests a meaning beyond, there's something besides simple trail marking going on up here in this BK passage. I mean, here you are at BK 44. You can't see it, but there's one here. There's one that Mike's in front of, and then there's this cluster of 3 or 4 right here. Now, to go back to the Arctic analogy, which is imperfect, but the Inuksuk, these stone structures in eastern Canada in the Arctic, might give us some insights, because think about it, these are indigenous people using stone structures in relatively featureless and potentially dangerous landscapes. I mean, I'm talking about the Arctic, but I'm also talking about Helm's Deep. So in the Arctic, many of the Inuksuk, these stone structures, are very simple stone structures. The most common one is a simple stone put on its end. The Inuit who live there call it, well, I'm not going to use their word, but in translation, the word means deconfuser. And perhaps that has some correlation here. They often serve as reference points in the Arctic. They serve as trail and directional markers. However, in the Arctic, some of the complex concentrations of stone markers have other meanings, passed down orally among native inhabitants. So in the Arctic, they do things like mark food caches, mark good hunting areas, locate other resources, signify where you can find powerful spiritual places. Well, some of those won't apply. I don't think there's a food cache in Helm's Deep, but you get the idea. Similarly, we suggest that the concentration of them in certain places, particularly in the BK passage, probably serves some additional function besides simply marking the trail. Again, more research is needed. In conclusion, the prehistoric stone structures are a remarkable and unparalleled archaeological resource, well worthy of study and conservation. At Helm's Deep Cave, the late Archaic structures were used to mark trails or routes. They were used as reference points and to provide probably directional information. The large concentration of stone structures in BK passage hints at other purposes as well. And we hope that our initial research at Helm's Deep Cave will stimulate awareness and interest in stone features. Cavers, you might very well find some of these in other caves. And if you do, give us a ring. And we hope to attract additional archaeological resources to Helm's Deep Cave and to help us study these. Thank you very much.